What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Blood Harvest, Part 1. The Hunger Interrupted. Viktor Dracul stood atop the abandoned clock tower, his black cloak billowing in the autumn wind as he surveyed his hunting grounds. For 3 centuries, he had called the small town of Ravenwood home, a perfect arrangement where disappearances were infrequent enough to avoid scrutiny, yet regular enough to satisfy his thirst. Tonight should have been like any other. The full moon cast silver light across the town square below, where a young woman was walking alone, her pulse an irresistible rhythm in Victor's ears. His fangs extended instinctively, a pleasant ache spreading through his gums. But something was wrong. The air carried an unfamiliar stench, putrid, decaying, wrong. Victor's nostrils flared in disgust. In his centuries of existence, he had developed a connoisseur's appreciation for the scent of human blood, each person unique like a fine wine. But this smell was an abomination. Death without peace, rot without purpose. The woman below suddenly tensed, sensing danger before her human eyes could detect it. From the shadows of an alleyway, a figure emerged, jerking forward with uneven steps, shoulders hunched at an unnatural angle. Its movements were disjointed, as though its limbs were being pulled by invisible strings. Victor hissed. Zombies. He had encountered them once before, centuries ago in a remote village in Eastern Europe. The plague had been contained before it could spread, but he remembered the taste of their blood, black, congealed, and toxic even to him. The woman screamed as the creature lunged, but Victor was already in motion. He leapt from the clock tower, his supernatural reflexes carrying him across the night sky and landing between the woman and her attacker in a single bound. Up close, the zombie was even more repulsive. Its skin mottled green and gray, eyes milky white, mouth dripping with black ichor. A fresh turning, judging by the remains of a business suit still clinging to its decomposing frame. Run! Victor commanded the woman without turning around. He heard her footsteps retreating rapidly, her heart pounding deliciously with fear. A meal for another night, perhaps. The zombie lurched forward, emitting a guttural moan. Victor's hand shot out, gripping the creature's throat. In his younger days, he might have recoiled from touching such a vile thing, but centuries had hardened him. Who made you? He demanded, knowing the creature couldn't answer. But something had started this infection, and Victor needed to find the source. With a sharp twist, he separated the zombie's head from its shoulders. The body collapsed, twitching momentarily before going still. Victor released the head with distaste, letting it roll away in the gutter. He closed his eyes, extending his senses outward. More of them were out there, dozens perhaps, moving through his hunting grounds, turning his food supply into more of their kind. This was unacceptable. Viktor Dracul had not survived 3 centuries by allowing threats to his existence go unchallenged. The zombies were turning his cattle, his humans, into inedible, putrid waste. Each human transformed was one less vessel of sweet blood for him to drink. Self-preservation and hunger were powerful motivators, even for the undead. With a snarl that would have frozen human blood, Victor set off into the night. The hunt had changed. Tonight, the predator would protect the prey, if only to preserve them for himself. Part 2. Unlikely Alliances. Dawn was approaching, and Victor needed shelter. The old mausoleum in Ravenwood Cemetery had served him well for decades, a fitting irony that the living dead should sleep among the properly deceased. As he descended the stone steps, Victor froze, a heartbeat, human, inside his sanctuary. He moved silently through the shadows, ready to eliminate the intruder, when he recognized her scent. The woman from the town square. The one he had saved. She sat huddled against his marble sarcophagus, knees drawn to her chest, a silver cross clutched in trembling hands. "That won't help you," Viktor said, stepping to the dim light of the candles she had lit. "Not against me, and certainly not against them." The woman jumped, her pulse quickening deliciously. She was young, mid-20s perhaps, with copper hair and eyes the color of whiskey. In another circumstance, Viktor would have drained her without conversation. You saved me," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "From that thing." "I did." Viktor circled her slowly, assessing. "And now you've followed me to my resting place. How unfortunate for you." "I'm Dr. Eliza Morgan," she said, rising to her feet. "I work at Ravenwood General. I've been tracking the infection for 3 days now." Viktor paused. "You know what those creatures are?" "Some kind of viral necrotizing fasciitis, combined with a prion disease affecting the brain." She spoke quickly, clinically. "It started with 3 patients in the emergency room. By morning, it was 17. By the next night, the hospital was overrun." "And you think I care about your medical crisis because—" Viktor's voice was cold, though her knowledge intrigued him. "Because you're not human, yet you killed one of them." Eliza's eyes narrowed. "And because they're spreading. Fast. Another week, maybe less, and there won't be anyone left in Ravenwood." No one left to feed on. The implication hung unspoken between them. "What do you want from me, Dr. Morgan?" Viktor asked. "Help." She reached into her bag and pulled out a laptop. "I've been studying blood samples. The infected have a pathogen I've never seen before. It reanimates dead tissue, but it destroys living cells, particularly in the brain. But here," she turned the screen toward him, showing microscopic images of blood cells. "This sample is different." Viktor glanced at the screen. "And whose blood might that be?" "I think you know." Eliza met his gaze without flinching. "I took it from your hand when you grabbed that creature. You cut yourself on its teeth." Viktor felt a flash of anger, then admiration for her boldness. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Your blood kills the pathogen on contact," she continued. "Whatever you are, vampire, I'm guessing, based on, well, everything about you. Your physiology might be the key to stopping this." Viktor laughed. Sound that rarely escaped him. "Let me understand. You want me, a predator who has fed on humans for centuries, to help you save humanity from becoming inedible?" "Yes." Eliza's directness was refreshing. "Our interests align, don't they? You need living humans. I need to stop zombies from eating everyone. Temporary alliance." Viktor considered her offer as the first rays of sunshine began to filter through the cracks in the mausoleum ceiling. He should kill her now. She knew too much. And yet... "I've lived long enough to recognize the value of adaptation," he said finally. "Tell me what you need." "Blood samples, for starters," Eliza replied, visibly relieved. "And your strength. There's a CDC field office 2 towns over. If we can develop a treatment using your blood as a base—" "You misunderstand, Doctor," Viktor interrupted. "I will help eliminate these creatures to preserve my feeding grounds, but I have no interest in government agencies studying my blood." Eliza's face fell, but she nodded. "Then we work alone. Well, we need a lab, equipment." "I have property," Viktor said. "On the edge of the town. Isolated. Well equipped. I've had centuries to accumulate resources." "A vampire with a private lab?" Eliza raised an eyebrow. "I've always found science fascinating," Viktor replied. "How do you think I've survived this long? By hiding in coffins and avoiding garlic? Evolution requires adaptation, Dr. Morgan. As the sun rose outside, Victor retreated deeper into the shadows of the mausoleum. Rest here today. You'll be safe. When night falls, we'll go to my lab. Eliza nodded, but kept her distance. Smart woman. One question, she said as Victor prepared to enter his daylight slumber. If we succeed and save everyone, what then? You'll go back to hunting them? Victor smiled, revealing the tips of his fangs. Perhaps we can discuss a more sustainable arrangement. I've survived this long without depleting my resources. One doesn't need to kill to feed. Part 3. The Laboratory. Victor's property turned out to be a sprawling Victorian mansion hidden behind wrought iron gates and centuries-old oak trees. As they approached in Eliza's car, Victor had insisted on driving, displaying a surprisingly comfort with modern technology. She couldn't help but laugh. Something amusing, Doctor? Victor asked, steering them through the gates that opened automatically as they approached. It's just so stereotypical, Eliza said. The vampire lived in a Gothic mansion on a hill. Would you prefer I resided in a studio apartment downtown? Victor's voice was dry. Some cliches exist for practical reasons. Isolation means privacy. Privacy means survival. The humor faded from Eliza's face as they parked. Through the windshield, they could see 3 zombies shambling across the manicured lawn, drawn perhaps by the sound of the car's engine. They're getting bolder, Victor observed, moving beyond the town center. They follow food sources, Eliza replied grimly. Like you. Victor was out of the car in a blur of movement. Eliza blinked, and all 3 zombies were down, their heads separated from their bodies. The vampire stood calmly wiping black ichor from his hands with a handkerchief. Efficient, Eliza murmured, climbing out of the car. Necessity. Victor led her to the mansion's entrance. I've had many enemies over the centuries. One learns to eliminate threats quickly. The interior of the mansion was a contradiction. Gothic architecture filled with modern amenities. Crystal chandeliers hung above sleek furniture. Renaissance paintings shared wall space with flat-screen monitors. This way, Victor said, guiding her past the main rooms to a bookshelf that, predictably, swung open to reveal a hidden passage. Eliza rolled her eyes but followed. The laboratory beyond defied her expectations. State-of-the-art equipment hummed efficiently in the cavernous underground space. Electron microscopes, centrifuges, a complete gene sequencing setup, and equipment she couldn't even identify. How did you... Money accumulates when you live for centuries, Victor said, removing his coat. And I've always found science fascinating, especially medical science. A vampire interested in medicine? Eliza mused, already moving toward the equipment. The irony. Is it ironic to want to understand one's food? Victor asked. Farmers study soil composition. Vintners study grapes. I study human biology. Eliza decided not to pursue that particular line of conversation. She unpacked her samples quickly. Vials of infected blood. Tissue samples. Her notes. I'll need your blood, she said, holding up a large syringe. Victor raised an eyebrow but extended his arm. Take what you need. It replenishes quickly. The vampire's blood was darker than human blood, almost black, and cooler to the touch. Under the microscope, it revealed structures Eliza had never seen before. Cells that moved with purpose, attacking and destroying the zombie pathogen on contact. Remarkable, she whispered after hours of observation. Your blood doesn't just kill the pathogen, it hunts it down, like it has intelligence. Not intelligence, Victor corrected, looking over her shoulder. Hunger. My blood seeks to consume, always. They worked through the night, Eliza running tests while Victor provided insights from centuries of observations. By dawn, they had identified the key components in vampire blood that destroyed the zombie pathogen. The problem, Eliza said, rubbing her exhausted eyes, is delivery. We can't exactly inject every infected person with vampire blood. The reaction is too violent. It could kill them before curing them. And we certainly can't turn everyone into vampires, Victor added dryly. Competition would be inconvenient. Eliza shot him a look. We need a way to synthesize just the specific proteins that attack the pathogen, without the rest of your vampiric traits. Victor was about to respond when an alarm sounded. He moved to a bank of monitors showing security camera feeds from around the property. Dozens of zombies were approaching from all directions, moving with more coordination than before. They're evolving, Eliza said, looking at the screens. Becoming more organized. No. Victor's voice was tense. They're being directed. On one monitor, a figure stood apart from the others. Unlike the shambling masses, this one moved with fluidity, gesturing as if commanding the others. Its eyes, looking directly at the camera, showing intelligence and hatred. What is that? Eliza asked. A problem, Victor replied grimly. It seems we're not the only ones adapting to the situation. The figure on the screen smiled, revealing a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. Not vampiric fangs, but something different. Something worse. We need to accelerate our timeline, Victor said, turning to Eliza. How close are you to synthesis? Hours away. Maybe a day, she admitted. What is that thing? Something that shouldn't exist. Victor's face was a mask of cold fury. A hybrid. Part zombie, part something else. And it knows I'm here. How is that possible? Because, Victor said, watching the creature direct the zombies toward the mansion's defenses. I believe it used to be one of my kind. A vampire, consumed by the zombie pathogen. But not defeated by it. Transformed. Eliza felt a chill run through her. What happens if they breach the mansion? Victor's eyes, normally cold and calculating, flashed with something like fear. Dr. Morgan. We may have to consider the possibility that we're trying to save a world that's already lost. Outside, the zombie horde surged forward, guided by their new leader, a creature that embodied the worst aspects of both undead species. The night's work had suddenly become a race against extinction. Part 4. The Siege. His name was Matthias, Victor said as he activated the mansion's defense systems. Steel shutters descended over windows. Electric fences hummed to life around the perimeter. A vampire I sired in 1897. We disagreed on feeding practices. Disagreed how? Eliza asked, working frantically at the lab bench to isolate the key proteins in Victor's blood. He preferred to drain his victims entirely. Draw attention. Create spectacles. Victor's voice was clinical, detached. I exiled him from my territory a century ago. I never expected to see him again. Especially not like this. The security monitors showed Matthias directing his horde methodically. Some zombies hurled themselves at the electric fences, their bodies burning but creating piles that others could climb over. Others attacked the power generators. They're not mindless, Eliza observed. He's using them as tools. Cannon fodder, Victor corrected. Matthias always was wasteful. An explosion rocked the mansion as the zombies breached one of the outer defenses. How much more time do you need? Victor asked, moving toward the laboratory exit. Eliza checked her equipment. 2 hours minimum. The centrifuge needs to complete at least 3 more separation cycles, and then I need to stabilize the compound. You have 1 hour, Victor said grimly. I'll buy you as much time as I can. Before she could protest, he was gone, moving with supernatural speed toward the sounds of the breach. Eliza turned back to her work, hands steady despite her racing heart. Through the security monitors, she watched Victor engage the first wave of zombies that broke through. He moved like water, fluid and relentless, tearing through the undead with brutal efficiency. But there were so many, and behind them all stood Matthias, watching with an intelligent malice. Eliza forced herself to focus on the centrifuge, willing it to spin faster. On another monitor, she saw zombies finding access through a cellar entrance. She hastily locked the laboratory door, though she knew it wouldn't hold them for long. Viktor appeared on the main floor monitor, surrounded by fallen zombies but looking noticeably weaker. He had overextended himself, fought too many. As she watched, Matthias finally stepped forward into the mansion, moving with the fluid grace of a vampire, but with the hunger of a zombie radiating from his posture.
Viktor?
His voice came through the speakers, distorted but recognizable.
Your hospitality is lacking. No invitation for your old progeny?
Viktor snarled, circling the hybrid creature warily. You are not my progeny anymore. You're an abomination. Matthias laughed, a wet, gurgling sound.
Evolution, my maker. I am the future of both our kinds. Stronger than a vampire, smarter than a zombie, hungrier than both.
How? Viktor demanded, buying time as they circled each other. In the lab, Eliza silently urged the centrifuge to finish its cycle.
I thought myself immune when the first infected attacked me.
Matthias explained, his movements jerky yet purposeful.
I killed dozens, fed on their black blood out of curiosity. A mistake. Or perhaps destiny. The pathogen couldn't fully convert me, nor could my vampire nature completely reject it. We reached an accommodation.
You've doomed yourself, Viktor said, and now you seek to doom all others.
I seek to feed.
Matthias corrected.
These mindless ones obey me because the pathogen recognizes me as its evolved form. They bring me food, Viktor. They bring me blood. They bring me power.
They bring you extinction, Viktor replied. When your horde has consumed all humans, what then? You'll starve together. Matthias smiled, revealing teeth that were neither fully vampire fangs nor zombie rotten stumps, but something horrifically in between.
By then, I'll have made more like me. Selective turning. A new race to rule this world.
In the laboratory, the centrifuge finally completed its cycle. Eliza quickly extracted the separated compounds, hands flying over the equipment to stabilize the solution. 1 vial, 2, 3, each filled with clear liquid that contained the essence of Viktor's vampire blood, modified to target only the zombie pathogen. A crash against the laboratory door made her jump. The zombies had found her. On the monitor, Viktor and Matthias launched at each other, colliding in midair with supernatural force. They fought with centuries of hatred behind each blow, crashing through furniture and walls. But Viktor was weakened from fighting the horde, while Matthias seemed energized by the chaos around him. The laboratory door buckled under repeated impacts. Eliza loaded the vials into a pressurized injector gun, a delivery system designed for mass vaccination. She had only prepared 3 doses, not nearly enough for the entire horde, but perhaps enough for a test. The door splintered. Grotesque hands reached through the gaps. Eliza grabbed the injector and looked desperately for an escape route. There, an air duct in the ceiling, just large enough for her to crawl through. On the monitor, she saw Viktor thrown across the main hall, landing heavily against a marble column. Matthias stalked toward him, confident in his victory.
I'll drain you dry, Maker.
Matthias hissed.
Then I'll find whatever human you're protecting down here. I can smell her fear. Delicious.
Viktor's eyes flickered toward the camera, toward Eliza. A silent message passed between them. As the laboratory door finally gave way and the first zombie shambled in, Eliza climbed onto a desk and pulled herself into the air duct. The precious injector clutched to her chest. Behind her, hungry moans echoed through the metal passageway. She crawled frantically, following the duct's path upward. It had to lead to outside. All ventilation systems needed external access. She just hoped she could find Viktor before Matthias finished him off. The vampire might be cold, calculating, and ultimately self-serving, but right now, he was humanity's best hope. And perhaps, Eliza admitted to herself as she pushed forward through the claustrophobic metal tunnel, he had become something else to her as well. Not a friend. Never that. But a reminder that even monsters could choose their nature. Viktor killed to survive, not for pleasure. He protected his resources rather than wasting them. In a world suddenly full of true monsters, it almost seemed like virtue. Behind her, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. Ahead, a faint light indicated an exit grate. Eliza pushed forward, the injector clutched tightly in her hand, hoping she wasn't too late. Part 5. Evolution. Eliza emerged on the mansion's roof, the night air cold against her sweat-dampened skin. Below, chaos reigned. Zombies swarmed the grounds, their moans creating a horrific chorus that echoed across the once peaceful estate. Through a shattered skylight, she could see into the main hall where Viktor and Matthias continued their brutal combat. Viktor was losing. His movements, normally fluid and precise, had become desperate. Matthias, despite his jerky hybrid physiology, pressed his advantage mercilessly, driving Viktor back with each exchange. Eliza clutched the injector containing their only hope. 3 doses. Not enough to save everyone, but perhaps enough to turn the tide. She needed to get closer, but zombies blocked every entrance she could see. A crash from the skylight drew her attention. Viktor had been thrown through the glass and landed heavily on the roof, 30 feet away from her. He lay motionless, his body broken from the impact. Below, Matthias laughed triumphantly.
I can smell you, human,
The hybrid called, looking up toward her hiding place.
Come down and join our little reunion.
Eliza ran to Viktor's side. The vampire's eyes fluttered open, recognition dawning slowly. You should have escaped, he rasped. You miss all the fun? She tried to smile, but fear made it more of a grimace. Can you move? Viktor attempted to sit up, then fell back with a hiss of pain. Given time, I would heal, but time is something we lack. Through the broken skylight, they could see Matthias beginning to climb the walls toward them, moving with unnatural agility. The treatment, Viktor said urgently. Did you complete it? Eliza held up the injector. 3 doses, untested. Viktor's eyes narrowed. Give me one, now. But we don't know what effect it will have on a vampire, Eliza protested. It might kill you. And doing nothing definitely will, Viktor countered. Matthias is stronger than me now. Our only hope is to change the variables. Eliza hesitated only a moment before pressing the injector against Viktor's neck and triggering a dose, the clear liquid disappearing into his pale skin. The effect was immediate and horrifying. Viktor's body convulsed, his back arching as he screamed in agony. Black veins spread across his skin like a spiderweb, pulsing with unnatural light. His eyes rolled back, revealing only whites. Viktor! Eliza reached for him, but jerked back when his skin burned her fingers on contact. His body temperature was rising rapidly, steam already rising from his flesh in the cool night air. Matthias reached the edge of the roof, pulling himself up with predatory grace.
What have you done to him?
He asked, genuine curiosity in his voice.
No matter. He was always too cautious, too controlled. You'll both become part of something greater now.
Eliza backed away, clutching the injector with its 2 remaining doses. Viktor continued to convulse on the roof, his body undergoing some catastrophic transformation. Stay back, she warned Matthias, though she knew the threat was empty. The hybrid laughed.
What? You'll science me to death? I've evolved beyond either of our species, Doctor. Join me willingly, and I'll make your turning painless.
A blur of movement caught them both by surprise. Viktor, somehow on his feet, slammed into Matthias with renewed strength. But he was different. His skin still bore the black veins, but they no longer pulsed with sickness. Instead, they seemed to absorb the moonlight, making him appear wrapped in a dark, shifting armor.
Impossible!
Matthias gasped as Viktor lifted him by the throat.
The pathogen should have destroyed you. Evolution works both ways,
Viktor replied, his voice deeper, resonant with new power.
Your hybrid nature forced your body to compromise between vampire and zombie. My treatment forced my body to evolve against both.
With a casual flick of his wrist, Viktor sent Matthias flying across the roof. The hybrid landed on his feet, snarling with rage.
What have you become?
He demanded.
Something new,
Viktor answered.
something better.
They clashed again, but the dynamic had completely reversed. Where Matthias had been dominant before, now Viktor moved with unprecedented speed and strength. His strikes left burning marks in the hybrid's flesh, as if his touch was toxic to the zombie pathogen. Eliza watched in awe as Viktor systematically dismantled his former progeny. Within minutes, Matthias lay broken at the edge of the roof, his hybrid body failing to regenerate under Viktor's evolved assault.
This changes nothing.
Matthias gasped.
My horde still outnumbers you. It will still consume every human in their path.
Viktor knelt beside the fallen hybrid.
You never did understand sustainability, Matthias. A predator who exterminates his prey dooms itself to starvation.
With clinical precision, Viktor pressed his palm against Matthias's chest. The hybrid screamed as black veins spread from Viktor's hands into his body, the evolved vampire blood attacking the zombie pathogen at its source. Within seconds, Matthias collapsed into dust. The combined undead energies in his body canceled each other out completely. Viktor turned to Eliza, his eyes now swirling with hints of silver among the traditional vampire red.
The treatment works better than you imagined, Doctor. My blood doesn't just kill the pathogen. It transforms it, uses its energy.
Eliza stared at him, medical curiosity warring with caution. What exactly have you become?
I'm not entirely sure,
Viktor admitted, examining his transformed hands.
but I believe I can now affect the zombies directly. The 2 remaining doses, we should use them strategically.
As if to demonstrate, Viktor leapt from the roof into the midst of the zombie horde below. Where before he had torn through them physically, now he simply touched them, and they fell. With each contact, the black veins on his skin pulsed brighter, as if he was absorbing something from them. Eliza watched as Viktor cleared a path of the main gate.
Come,
He called up to her.
we need to reach town.
The journey back to Ravenwood was surreal. Viktor drove while Eliza prepared the remaining doses, modifying them based on what she observed of Viktor's transformation.
Your theory?
Viktor asked as they approached the overrun town. Your vampire nature was already hostile to the zombie pathogen, Eliza explained. The treatment amplified that, creating a kind of adaptive immunity that doesn't just resist the pathogen, but converts its energy. You're like a walking antivirus program.
And these modified doses?
Should work on humans who hadn't turned yet, Eliza said. Create immunity without, well, turning them into whatever you become. Viktor smiled slightly.
Disappointing. I rather like being unique.
They found survivors barricaded in the police station, a dozen terrified townspeople and a few officers with dwindling ammunition. Zombies surrounded the building, hundreds of them now, aimless without Matthias's direction but no less dangerous.
I'll clear a path,
Viktor said.
You get inside and administer the treatments to anyone who were wounded but not turned. Their blood will become a weapon.
And then? Eliza asked, suddenly uncertain of what Viktor's motivation now that he had evolved into something even more powerful. Viktor met her gaze, understanding her concern.
And then we expand the treatment. Save what humans remain. Restore balance.
So you can continue feeding? Eliza stated, not a question.
So life can continue,
Viktor corrected.
in all its forms. I've existed for centuries by understanding one fundamental truth, Dr. Morgan. Predators and prey exist in equilibrium. Disrupting that benefits no one.
As they prepared to make their move, Eliza realized that Viktor's evolution had changed more than his physical form. His perspective had shifted, from merely protecting his food supply to preserving an ecosystem that included him. It wasn't compassion, not exactly. Vampires would always be predators. But perhaps, Eliza thought as she watched Victor wade into the zombies' horde, leaving a path of dust in his wake. Evolution meant more than physical adaptation. Sometimes, it meant recognizing one's place in a larger system. When this was over, humans would still fear the night. Victor would still hunt. But he would hunt with purpose, with restraint, with understanding that even monsters had responsibilities to the world they inhabited. And in a strange way, that made him less of a monster than the mindless zombies or the power-hungry Matthias. Evolution wasn't just about becoming stronger. It was about becoming better. As Eliza raced toward the police station with the treatment that would save humanity, she found herself hoping that there would be room in the new equilibrium for science and monsters to work together. After all, both thrived in darkness, sought understanding of life's mysteries, and ultimately needed each other to survive. The world might never know how close it came to ending that night, but Victor would remember. And so would Eliza. An unlikely alliance that evolved into something neither had anticipated. A balance between predator and prey, life and undeath, monster and man. In the end, blood would still be harvested. But now, it would be with purpose, with restraint, with a plan for tomorrow. That, Victor reflected as he tore through the zombie horde to protect the humans he would one day feed upon, was the true meaning of evolution. Well, I'll be honest with you, I needed a break from the I'm a whatever trying to survive the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. I needed something weird. Like, weird. Good weird, fun weird, but weird. Besides zombies, I love vampire stuff. And not the stupid Twilight shit. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking like John Carpenter's vampires, After Dark, the gritty vampires. I like messed up vampires. Even that Annabelle movie that came out not too long ago was pretty freaking sick. But yeah, I just needed a palate cleanser. As much as I like doing the stories about everybody just trying to survive the zombie apocalypse, it is fun to just have a kind of off the wall story like this sometimes too. So I hope you enjoyed the story. I had a good time reading it. I had a good time creating it. So I'll see you guys next time. And remember to always face your fears.